Picture this: you wake up one morning in 5th century Britain. The Roman legions have vanished overnight, leaving behind empty fortresses and crumbling roads. Saxon warriors are sailing across the channel, their dragon-headed ships cutting through the morning mist like harbingers of doom. And somewhere in the Celtic Highlands, a legendary king named Arthur is about to be born from the chaos. But what was life really like for ordinary people during these legendary Dark Ages? The truth will absolutely shock you, because everything you think you know about this period is wrong. This wasn't just a time of darkness and barbarism, it was an era of incredible survival, mysterious legends, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Before we dive into this incredible journey through time, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Are you from Britain, exploring your ancestors' past? Or maybe you're discovering this history for the first time? And if you're ready to uncover the shocking truth about Dark Age Britain, smash that like button right now. Share this video with your history-loving friends. And don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing historical adventures. Part 1. The World CIOLAPCS. The years for 10 AD. For nearly 4 centuries longer than America has existed, Britain has been part of the mighty Roman Empire. Roman roads stretch from Hadrian's Wall to the white cliffs of Dover. Roman baths warm the wealthy in cities like Bath and York. Roman coins jingle in merchants' pouches across the land. But then, in one devastating moment, everything changes forever. Emperor Honorius, struggling to defend Rome itself from barbarian invasions, sends his final letter to the cities of Britain. The message is brutally simple: look to your own defenses. Translation: you're on your own. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find that your entire government, your police force, your military, your hospitals, your schools, everything that keeps society running has simply packed up and left overnight. That's exactly what happened to the people of Roman Britain. The Roman legions, those disciplined soldiers who had kept the peace for 400 years, marched to the ports with their gleaming armor and red standards. They board ships bound for Gaul, modern-day France, leaving behind a population of perhaps 3 million people who had known nothing but Roman rule for generations. With them go the engineers who maintained the roads, the doctors who treated the sick, the administrators who collected taxes and kept records, and the skilled craftsmen who built in stone and worked with metal. In a matter of months, Britain transforms from a sophisticated Roman province into a collection of isolated communities, each struggling to survive on their own. The immediate impact is catastrophic. Roman currency becomes worthless overnight. Imagine if all your money suddenly turned into colorful paper. The complex trade networks that brought wine from Gaul, olive oil from Spain, and luxury goods from across the empire collapse instantly. The famous Roman roads, once bustling with merchants, messengers, and military patrols, fall eerily silent. Grass begins to grow through the stone pavements that had carried the weight of empire for centuries. Cities that had thrived for generations begin to empty as people flee to the countryside, seeking safety in numbers and the promise of food from the land. London, once a thriving port city of 45,000 people, shrinks to fewer than 10,000 residents within a generation. The grand public buildings, the Forum, the amphitheater, the elaborate bathhouses, stand empty, their roofs collapsing, their walls crumbling. York, the northern capital where Roman emperors had held court, becomes a ghost town. The famous hot springs of Bath, where Romans had bathed in luxury for centuries, are abandoned to the elements. The elaborate villa system that had dominated the countryside collapses as wealthy Roman landowners flee to Gaul or are killed by desperate locals. Their sophisticated heated floors, intricate mosaics, and painted walls are left to decay, eventually becoming shelters for animals and squatters. But perhaps the most devastating loss is knowledge itself. Libraries are abandoned, their scrolls rotting or being used as kindling. Schools close their doors forever. The literacy rate, already low among the general population, plummets to almost zero. Within a single generation, the ability to read and write becomes as rare as the ability to work with glass or cut stone. Medical knowledge vanishes with the departure of trained Roman doctors. Complex technologies, glassmaking, advanced metallurgy, stone carving, engineering are lost as the skilled artisans who possessed these secrets scatter to the winds. The sophisticated Roman legal system, with its written laws and trained judges, gives way to local customs and the rule of the strongest. Part 2. Survival in the RUNS. Meet Aelred, a British farmer living in what was once a prosperous Roman villa estate in 450 AD, 40 years after the legions departed. His story represents millions of ordinary people who had to adapt to a world turned upside down. Aelred wakes at dawn in his one-room timber house, a simple rectangular building with walls made of wattle and daub, basically mud mixed with straw and animal dung, pressed between wooden stakes. The roof is thatched with straw, and there are no glass windows, just holes in the walls covered with wooden shutters. On cold nights, he closes the shutters and lives in near-total darkness, the only light coming from a central fire pit that fills the room with smoke. Aelred shares this single room with his wife Gwendolyn, their 3 children, and the family. Pig, yes, The pig lives indoors because it's too valuable to risk leaving outside where wolves or thieves might take it. They all sleep on straw mattresses laid directly on the dirt floor, covered with rough woolen blankets that haven't been washed in months. The smell is overwhelming: unwashed bodies, smoke, animal waste, and rotting food scraps. But this is normal life for 95% of the population. For breakfast, Aelred's family eats barley porridge, maybe with a bit of cheese if they're lucky. There's no sugar, honey is precious and rare. They drink ale because it's safer than water, which is often contaminated with disease. The children, if they survive past age 5, can expect to live to about 35 if they're fortunate. Aelred himself, at 42, is considered an old man. His teeth are rotted from poor nutrition, his back is bent from years of hard labor, and he bears the scars of countless injuries that never healed properly because there were no doctors to treat them. Every day is a struggle for survival. Aelred must tend his crops while constantly watching for Saxon raiders who might appear without warning, burning his fields and killing his family. He must protect his livestock from wolves and bears that still roam the British countryside. In winter, when food runs low, his family might eat bread made from acorns or tree bark. Disease is everywhere: plague, dysentery, tuberculosis, and there's no medicine except herbal remedies that rarely work. Clothing is a luxury that few can afford. Aelred owns one set of clothes: a woolen tunic, rough trousers, and leather shoes that he repairs repeatedly until they're more patched than original material. The clothes are never washed, just beaten clean with sticks. His wife Gwendolyn spends her days spinning wool and weaving cloth, but fabric is so precious that most people wear their clothes until they literally fall apart. The wealthy might own a linen undergarment, but for most people, that's an unimaginable luxury. Yet into this world of hardship and uncertainty came the Saxons, and contrary to popular belief, they weren't just brutal invaders. Archaeological evidence shows that Saxon settlement was often peaceful, with Germanic farmers establishing small communities alongside British ones. They brought new technologies, advanced metalworking techniques, different pottery styles, and innovative farming methods. Their language, Old English, gradually spread not just through conquest but through trade and intermarriage. Saxon burial customs, with their elaborate grave goods and ship burials, reveal a sophisticated culture that valued craftsmanship and honored their dead. The integration wasn't always violent. Archaeological sites show British and Saxon artifacts found together, suggesting communities where both cultures coexisted. Saxon women married British men, Saxon traders worked with British merchants, and over time, a new hybrid culture emerged. But this process took generations and was marked by constant uncertainty and occasional violence. Part 3. Lords, warriors, and legendes. In this world without central authority, power belonged to whoever could protect their followers from the chaos. Local strongmen emerged, calling themselves kings and princes, ruling from hill forts and wooden halls. These weren't the stone castles of later centuries, but earthwork fortifications built on hilltops, often reusing iron age sites that had been abandoned for centuries during the Roman peace. One of the most famous of these sites is Tintagel in Cornwall, forever linked with the legend of King Arthur. Recent archaeological excavations have revealed that Tintagel was indeed a major power center in the 5th and 6th centuries, with evidence of long-distance trade, skilled craftsmen, and wealthy rulers. Pottery from the Mediterranean, glass from France, and metalwork from Ireland all found their way to this remote Cornish cliff, suggesting that whoever ruled here had extensive connections and considerable wealth. The warrior culture that emerged was based on personal loyalty between lord and follower. A successful leader was one who could protect his people, provide them with food and shelter, and reward their loyalty with gifts of weapons, jewelry, and land. The Great Hall became the center of this world, a long wooden building where the lord and his warriors would feast, drink, and listen to stories told by traveling bards. These halls were magnificent by Dark Age standards, with carved wooden posts, painted walls, and elaborate metalwork decorating the weapons and jewelry of the elite. But was King Arthur real? The honest answer is that we don't know for certain, but there's tantalizing evidence that suggests he might have been based on a real person. Historical records mention several British leaders who fought against Saxon expansion in the late 5th and early 6th centuries. Names like Ambrosius Aurelianus appear in contemporary sources as successful military commanders who won significant victories against Saxon forces. Around 500 AD, the Britons won a major victory at the Battle of Badon Hill, which halted Saxon expansion for a generation. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of powerful British leaders during this period. High-status burials with elaborate grave goods, imported luxury items, and evidence of organized military campaigns all point to sophisticated political structures. The legends of Arthur, the Round Table, the Holy Grail, the Sword in the Stone, developed over centuries of storytelling, but at their heart may lie memories of real events and real heroes who stood against the darkness. Life in a Dark Age court was a mixture of splendor and squalor. The Lord's Hall might be decorated with elaborate tapestries and filled with the gleam of gold and silver, but it was still a wooden building with a dirt floor and a central fire pit that filled the room with smoke. A typical feast would feature roasted meat, beef, pork, mutton, and venison cooked on spits over the fire. Bread was baked in outdoor ovens and used as plates, called trenchers. Mead, made from fermented honey, was the drink of choice for special occasions. While ale was the everyday beverage, women in this world had more rights than they would in later medieval times. They could own property, inherit land, and even rule, in their own right. Some became powerful political figures, arranging marriages, negotiating treaties, and commanding armies. They were also skilled in textile production, creating the elaborate embroidered garments and tapestries that displayed their family's wealth and status. Part 4. Spirits, Gods, and Changing Belief. The religious landscape of Dark Age Britain was incredibly complex, with Christianity, pagan beliefs, and ancient Celtic traditions all competing for the hearts and minds of the people. Archaeological evidence shows that rural pagan temples were actually being refurbished and expanded at the start of this period, suggesting that the collapse of Roman authority led to a revival of traditional British religious practices. Celtic paganism had never completely disappeared during the Roman period. Sacred groves and springs continued to be venerated. Druids still practiced their mysteries in remote areas, and the old seasonal festivals Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, and Lughnasadh continued to mark the turning of the year. People believed in a thin boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, where ancestors and spirits could influence daily life. Magic was everywhere in the charms worn to protect against disease, in the herbs gathered to heal the sick, in the rituals performed to ensure good harvests. The Saxons brought their own gods, Wotan, Thor, Freya, and dozens of others. Saxon graves contained Thor's hammer amulets, runic inscriptions calling on the gods for protection, and elaborate ship burials that were meant to carry the dead to Valhalla. Their religion emphasized courage in battle, loyalty to one's lord, and the importance of fame and reputation that would outlive death. Into this religious chaos came Christian missionaries, first from Ireland and later from Rome. St. Augustine arrived in Kent in 597 AD, beginning the organized conversion of England to Christianity. But this wasn't a simple process of replacing one religion with another. Instead, Christianity adapted to local customs and beliefs, incorporating elements of paganism that made the new faith more acceptable to converts. Christian festivals were deliberately placed to coincide with pagan celebrations. Christmas replaced the winter solstice, Easter incorporated spring fertility rituals, and All Saints' Day was placed on the same date as Samhain. Churches were built on the sites of pagan temples, and Christian saints often took on the attributes of local gods. The result was a uniquely British form of Christianity that retained many pre-Christian elements. The conversion process was gradual and often incomplete. Archaeological evidence suggests that many people hedged their bets, wearing both Christian crosses and pagan amulets, attending church services while still leaving offerings at sacred springs. Even after official conversion, old beliefs persisted in the form of folklore, superstitions, and folk remedies that continued for centuries. Part 5. The Legacy of the Dark Ages. The term Dark Ages is actually misleading. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed that this period was far more sophisticated and culturally rich than historians once believed. The treasures found at Sutton Hoo, the royal burial site in Suffolk, include some of the finest metalwork ever produced in medieval Europe. The intricate designs, the sophisticated craftsmanship, and the evidence of international trade connections all point to a culture that was anything but backward or primitive. Archaeological excavations across Britain have uncovered evidence of continuous technological development throughout the Dark Ages. Skilled metal workers created beautiful jewelry, weapons, and household items. Carpenters built increasingly sophisticated timber structures. Textile workers produced elaborate embroidered garments that rivaled anything made in continental Europe. Agricultural techniques continued to improve, with new crops being introduced, and farming methods refined. The period also saw remarkable literary achievements. The great Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf, with its complex themes and sophisticated language, was composed during this era. The Venerable Bede wrote his ecclesiastical history of the English people, one of the finest historical works of the medieval period. Irish monks preserved classical learning and created illuminated manuscripts of extraordinary beauty, like the Book of Kells and the Lindisfarne Gospels. The foundation of what would become England was laid during these supposedly dark centuries. The English language evolved from the Old English spoken by Saxon settlers, incorporating elements of Celtic, Latin, and Norse. The English legal system developed from Saxon customs and traditions. The English landscape was shaped by the settlements, farms, and roads built during this period. Even the English character, the love of individual freedom, the respect for ancient customs, the distrust of central authority can be traced back to the Dark Ages. The legends born during this period became the foundation myths of English culture. The stories of King Arthur and his knights, of brave warriors fighting against overwhelming odds, of loyalty, honor, and sacrifice in the face of defeat, provided a sense of national identity that lasted for centuries. These weren't just entertaining stories, they were the cultural DNA of a people trying to make sense of their place in history. So there you have it, the shocking truth about Dark Age Britain. These weren't just centuries of chaos and barbarism. There were times of incredible transformation, when ordinary people survived impossible conditions, when legends were born, and when the very foundations of English culture were laid. The real heroes weren't just the legendary kings like Arthur, they were farmers like Aelred, craftsmen preserving ancient skills, and women keeping families alive through the darkest times. They faced down Saxon raiders, survived plagues, and somehow managed to create beautiful art and epic poetry in the midst of chaos. The next time you hear about the Dark Ages, remember they weren't really dark at all. They were illuminated by the courage of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. They were the crucible in which modern Britain was forged, the proving ground where a new culture was born from the ashes of the old. The archaeological evidence is clear. This was a period of remarkable creativity, resilience, and cultural achievement that deserves to be remembered, not for its darkness, but for its light. What shocked you most about life in Dark Age Britain? Was it the daily struggle for survival, the complex religious landscape, or the possibility that King Arthur might have been real? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you enjoyed this journey through time, smash that like button, share this with your history-loving friends, and subscribe for more incredible stories from the past. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest adventures in history. Coming up next week, the Viking raids. What really happened when the Northmen came to Britain? Trust me, you won't want to miss it.